Right now, in this exact moment, you are certain you exist. You feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet hum of your own thoughts. You remember waking up this morning, you remember your childhood, and you remember the person you were yesterday. It feels solid, it feels like a fact. But here's the problem: the deeper we look into the math of the universe, the more that fact begins to dissolve. Physics suggests that your sense of being real is actually a massive statistical longshot. If we follow the laws of thermodynamics to their logical end, you are far more likely to be a momentary flicker in the vacuum, a solitary brain that spontaneously appeared in the dark just a second ago, complete with a lifetime of fake memories, than you are to be a biological human with a real past. It's called the Boltzmann Brain paradox, and for physicists, it's not a ghost story. It's a serious cosmological glitch that we haven't been able to solve. And if it's not the math of the void, it's the logic of the machine. If we assume that any advanced civilization eventually learns to simulate consciousness, they won't do it just once. They'll do it billions of times. Statistically, that puts you in a difficult position. The odds that you are the one biological original among a trillion digital copies are essentially zero. Whether you're a random fluctuation or a line of code, the conclusion is the same. The person you think you are is probably just a very convincing rendering. In this exploration, we're going to trace these loops to their breaking point. We'll look at the desperate ways science tries to save our reality, the strange places where the seams of our world might be showing, and finally, the one thing that remains undeniable even if every memory and every atom is a lie. I know that's a lot to hold, and I'm not here to trigger an existential crisis. I'm just as caught in this loop as you are. But I think there's something important waiting for us if we're brave enough to look directly at the groundlessness. This isn't about deciding what's fake, it's about discovering what remains when the floor disappears. So for the next few minutes, let's stop trying to prove we're real. Let's just see what it's like to be here together, in the middle of the mystery. To understand why physics would ever suggest you aren't real, we have to look at a man named Ludwig Boltzmann. Back in the late 1800s, he gave us a way to understand the messiness of the universe, what we call entropy. The idea is simple: things naturally move from order to disorder. A glass of water breaks, it doesn't spontaneously put itself back together. But Boltzmann's math revealed a loophole. Because entropy is based on probability, if you wait long enough, truly, cosmically long enough, randomness will eventually fluctuate back into order. It's like shaking a box of puzzle pieces for a trillion years. Eventually, just by sheer luck, they'll land in the shape of a house. Now, here is where it gets haunting. If the universe is eternal, or even just incredibly old, these fluctuations aren't just possible, they're inevitable. Physicists realize that it is statistically much cheaper for the universe to fluctuate a single conscious brain into existence than it is to fluctuate an entire coherent universe with billions of stars and a 14 billion year history. To create a brain that thinks it's in a universe requires a tiny amount of energy compared to actually building the universe itself. This is the Boltzmann Brain paradox. It suggests that, mathematically, you are far more likely to be a solitary mind that flickered into existence in the dark, possessing a brain full of false memories, than you are to be a person living on a real planet. Think about your most cherished memory. Maybe it's the way the light hit the kitchen table when you were a child, or the specific feeling of a hand you once held. In this framework, that memory isn't a recording of the past. It's just a specific arrangement of neurons that happened to fluctuate into place a second ago. You feel like you have a past because your brain is currently configured to tell you that you do. Even the physics you use to understand this, the papers by Richard Feynman or the modern calculations of people like Brian Greene, could be part of the hallucination. Greene himself has admitted that while we want our theories to rule this out, it has proved surprisingly difficult. It feels impossible, doesn't it? Every fiber of your being rejects it. You feel your feet on the floor, you know what you did this morning, but that's the nature of the trap. The feeling of realness is just another piece of data in the brain. If you were a Boltzmann brain, you would feel exactly this certain. You would have the same visceral resistance to the idea. You would remember reading this sentence: "We're left standing on a foundation that seems to dissolve the moment we look at it too closely." If probability favors the impossible, how do we ever find our way back to the truth? If we follow the math to its logical conclusion, we end up in a place where we can't even trust the math anymore. This is what physicists call cognitive instability, and it's perhaps the strangest intellectual knot we've ever tied. Think about the irony for a second. We use the laws of physics and the rigor of probability to reach this unsettling conclusion that we're likely just flickering hallucinations. But if that conclusion is actually true, then our brains are just random glitches. And if our brains are random glitches, then our knowledge of physics is also a glitch. It isn't based on real experiments or a real history of science, it's just a pattern that happened to form in the void. This is why someone like Sean Carroll argues that we have to reject any theory that predicts we are Boltzmann brains. Not necessarily because the math is wrong, but because the theory is cognitively unstable. A theory that undermines your ability to even trust your own reasoning is a dead end. It's like standing on a ladder and realizing the ladder is made of smoke. You can't climb it, but you also can't really trust the ground you were standing on before you started. If you accept you're a Boltzmann brain, you've essentially argued yourself out of the ability to argue at all. It's a modern, thermodynamic version of the evil demon problem that the philosopher René Descartes obsessed over centuries ago. He wondered if some powerful entity was tricking his senses, making him believe in a world that wasn't there. For us, that demon isn't a supernatural being. It's just the cold, indifferent math of an eternal universe. It's the realization that if the timeline is infinite, then order is the exception and chaos is the rule. We are trying to use reason to escape a trap that reason itself built. Of course, scientists have spent years looking for the emergency exit. Just recently, in early 2026, researchers at the Santa Fe Institute suggested that the paradox itself might be based on circular reasoning, what they call the entropy conjecture. They argue that our current physics are just effective theories, good enough to get us through the day but not designed to explain the infinite. We search for these exits because we want to believe that our observations matter. We want to believe that when we look at a star, there is actually a star there and not just a stray neuron firing in a lonely mind that's about to disappear. But there's a quiet, nagging question at the heart of all those scientific rescues. Are we choosing these models because they're more likely to be true, or are we choosing them because they're the only ones that allow us to stay sane? It's a strange loop. We use our reason to explore the universe, but when that reason points toward our own non-existence, we start looking for a way to change the rules. It's a moment of profound intellectual humility. We realize that we are trapped inside our own perspective, trying to use a brain to prove that the brain is real. And just as we're struggling to find our footing in this thermodynamic hall of mirrors, another framework appears. It's one that feels a bit more modern, a bit more deliberate, but no less haunting. If we aren't random accidents of physics, maybe we're something else entirely. Maybe we aren't fluctuated. Maybe we're computed. If the idea of being a random glitch in the vacuum feels a bit too cold, there's another possibility that's gained a lot of ground lately. It's the idea that you aren't an accident at all, but a deliberate creation. You've probably heard of simulation theory, the notion that we're living inside a sophisticated computer program. It sounds like something out of a late-night sci-fi movie, but back in 2003, a philosopher named Nick Bostrom laid out a logical argument that is surprisingly hard to break. He suggested a trilemma. Basically, one of three things must be true. Either civilizations like ours almost always go extinct before they reach a post-human stage where they can run realistic simulations, or those advanced civilizations have absolutely no interest in running such simulations, or we are almost certainly living in one right now. Think about the trajectory we're already on. We've gone from simple arcade games to photorealistic open-world experiences in just a few decades. If you project that forward 1,000 years or 10,000, it's not hard to imagine a civilization capable of simulating consciousness itself. If they can do it once, they'll probably do it millions of times. They might run these programs to study history, to test out theories of physics, or maybe just for entertainment. But here's the kicker: if there are millions of simulated worlds and only one base reality, then statistically speaking, which one are you more likely to be in? The odds that you are the one biological original among billions of digital copies are vanishingly small. It's a thought that brings its own kind of vertigo. It suggests that our universe might have a low resolution compared to whatever is running us. We might be simplified versions of something much more complex. This isn't just a fun what if anymore. In the last couple of years, researchers like David Kipping have used Bayesian statistics to try and pin down the actual probability. Even with very conservative estimates, they've landed on something like a 20% chance that we're simulated. That's not a fringe number. That's a 1 in 5 chance that everything you see, the trees, the sky, the person you love, is being rendered for your benefit. The strange thing is that a simulation doesn't require a computer made of silicon. This is the idea of substrate independence. It's the belief that consciousness doesn't care if it's running on biological neurons or digital circuits. If the pattern is right, the experience is real. If that's true, then being simulated doesn't mean you're fake. It just means your foundation is different than you thought. But it does mean that your reality could, in theory, be paused, edited, or deleted. From inside the program, there would be no obvious way to tell. A well-designed simulation wouldn't have a quit menu or a visible glitch. It would just be your life. You'd wake up, feel the sun on your face, and never suspect that the sun is just a highly efficient calculation. But as we look closer at the world, at the way physics seems to have a pixel size at the smallest scales, or the way the constants of nature seem a little too perfectly tuned for life, some people have started to wonder if the developers left a few fingerprints behind. If the math of the universe looks like code, maybe that's because it is. And if that's the case, we have to wonder if we've ever seen a glitch without realizing what it was. If you were writing the code for a universe, you'd probably look for ways to save on processing power. In modern video games, we use something called frustum culling. The computer only renders the objects the player is currently looking at to keep things running smoothly. It's fascinating then to look at quantum mechanics and see something that feels eerily similar. The famous double-slit experiment tells us that subatomic particles seem to behave differently when they're being observed. It's as if the universe doesn't bother rendering a definite state until a conscious observer forces the calculation. Then there's the speed of light. We often wonder why there is a speed limit to the universe at all. In a digital world, a speed limit is often just the maximum rate at which information can be processed through the system. Even the Planck length, the smallest possible measurement in physics, starts to look suspiciously like a pixel size. If you zoom in far enough on any digital image, you eventually hit the square. Physics suggests that if you zoom in far enough on reality, you hit a point where space and time become chunky rather than smooth. But beyond the math, there are the things we feel. We've all had those moments that feel off. Déjà vu that lingers a second too long, a synchronicity so specific it feels like a wink from the universe. And then there's the Mandela effect, that strange phenomenon where thousands of unrelated people share the exact same false memory. You might remember the Berenstain Bears being spelled with an E instead of an A, or a movie line that doesn't actually exist in the original film. We usually write these off as the quirks of a fallible human brain, and they almost certainly are. But in a simulated world, they'd look like code patches, a resyncing error, a minor update to the collective database that didn't quite take for everyone at once. The most striking clue, though, is the fine-tuning of the universe. Physicists have noted that if the strength of gravity or the charge of an electron were different by even a fraction of a percent, stars wouldn't form and life would be impossible. It's like a radio dial that had to be set to exactly 98.12345 to hear the music. To some, this is evidence of a creator. To others, it's a sign that we're living in a tailored environment, a simulation designed specifically to see what happens when the conditions are just right. Of course, the skeptic in us knows that the human brain is a master pattern seeker. We are evolved to find signal in the noise, even when the noise is random. Are these glitches real, or are we just staring at a cloud until it looks like a face? It's hard to tell if we're seeing the truth or just seeing what we want to see. But the fact that these patterns exist at all, from the subatomic pixels to the shared errors in our memory, makes you wonder. If the world is a stage, maybe the seams are showing just enough for us to notice. It's a lot to carry, isn't it? We've spent this time systematically dismantling the floor beneath our feet. We've looked at the cold math that suggests we're random fluctuations in a void, and the digital logic that says we're likely lines of code in a vast, invisible machine. If you feel a bit of vertigo right now, that's okay. In fact, it's entirely rational. We've reached a point where we've discovered that we can't actually step outside of our own consciousness to verify if the world is real in the way we've always assumed. But there is a strange, quiet relief that starts to emerge when you stop fighting that uncertainty. Think about it. Whether you are a biological human on a rock, orbiting a star, or a Boltzmann brain flickering in the dark, or a simulated mind on a distant server, one thing remains absolutely, stubbornly undeniable. Experience is happening. Right now, you are aware of these words. You are aware of the weight of your body and the temperature of the air. You are experiencing the sensation of wondering whether you exist. This is what philosophers sometimes call the hard problem of consciousness. We can map every neuron and every line of code, but we still don't know why it feels like something to be you. And the beautiful thing about that mystery is that it's substrate independent. If you feel love for someone, that love isn't fake just because your neurons might be digital or your memories might be a statistical fluke. The quality of the experience is the reality. The pain of a loss, the warmth of a sunset, the spark of a new idea, these things are real because they are felt, regardless of what they're made of. We often spend so much energy trying to defend our reality, as if proving we are base reality is the only way our lives can have meaning. But what if we released that burden? What if we accepted that we might never have the proof we're looking for? There's a certain freedom in that groundlessness. It means you don't have to wait for a scientist or a programmer to tell you that your life is valid. You are the witness to your own existence. In many ways, this is the ultimate act of presence. It's moving away from the question, am I real? And moving toward the recognition that awareness is occurring. When you stop needing the world to be solid, you can finally inhabit it fully. You can stop being a detective trying to solve the mystery of your substrate and start being the person or the consciousness that actually lives the mystery. Take a breath for a second and just notice that you're here. Not here in a specific room or on a specific planet, but here as a point of awareness. You can doubt the floor, the walls, and even your own past. But you cannot doubt this moment of experiencing. And maybe, in the end, that's the only certainty we ever actually needed. We've traveled through some unsettling territory today. We've faced the possibility that our memories might be fabrications and our very world a digital reflection. And it's true. There is no experiment we can run to prove, once and for all, that we are the real ones. We are, in every scientific sense, trapped within our own perspective. But perhaps that inability to know isn't a flaw in our understanding. Maybe it's a fundamental feature of what it means to be alive. If reality were simple enough for us to fully grasp, it probably wouldn't be vast enough to contain us. When we zoom out, the labels like simulation or Boltzmann brain start to feel less like threats and more like attempts to name a mystery that is simply too big for words. In a universe where consciousness exists at all, however it arrived, the fact that you are here right now, peering into the gears of existence and feeling the vertigo of it all, is profound. You are the universe, or the code, or the vacuum, finally waking up to look at itself. So the question shifts. It's no longer, am I real? That question is too small. The real question is, what do you do with this strange, beautiful fact of awareness? How do you inhabit this moment, knowing it's the only thing you truly have? You may never find the solid ground you're looking for, but perhaps you'll find that you've been flying all along. This moment of wonder, this breath, is occurring. And for now, that is enough. We'll walk further next time. Thanks for watching.